This week on the 3RINGS podcast.
Everyone had those bright colours, which meant no one stood out.
Who is Tube Girl?
Allow yourself to be a star.
The issues are there.
No need to listen and care about everyone. She's having success, she's loving life.
Creating competition amongst colleges.
Losing weight is just completely the wrong sentiment and advice to be given.
Welcome to the 3RINGS podcast, episode 1. My name's Stuart Bishop and I'm here with my fellow director, Bailey. I was going to say Stuart Bishop again.
That'd be good.
No, I'm with my fellow director, Bailey J. Muir. How are you, Bailey?
Oh, I'm good now. You remembered my name. How are you?
I'm great. Look, we need to go straight into it and just admit something, don't we?
Yeah.
It's 1.5 because we've just done the podcast. And then I realised I didn't have my call centre.
Call centre.
You were taking the piss out of me, innit, for call centre. But I didn't have the call centre plugged in. Well, let's get on with it. Let's talk about the topics that we're going to be talking about this week. Topic 1, we are going to be talking about base college. And we're asking the question, do we need more performing arts colleges? Then we're going to be talking about the recent BBC Ballet documentary. Then we're going to be talking about Anitta. That's all I'm going to say. And then finally, we're going to be talking about Tube Girl. Now, if you don't know who Tube Girl is, definitely stay until the end to find out all about Tube Girl.
So, before we dive into these topics, first of all, get down below this video, hit the like button. I know you've literally watched 0 of this podcast yet, but you can always take the like back after if you hate us. Hit the subscribe, and even better, hit the notification bell, and then you'll know every time we release an episode, there's going to be a new one every Wednesday.
Let's go. Topic 1. Base College. This is taken from the Instagram for Base Dance Studios. Base Performing Arts College kicked off its first ever term this week, welcoming its new students to their new home with the inaugural induction days. We are proud to grow from a public studios to also, this is it, here is the big announcement in brackets, what shall become an additional established performing arts college backed by SCL Education and Lead Education. We knew this was coming, didn't we, Bailey? We had talked about this before. The moment they started saying that they were going to do a BTEC course, which I think it is at the moment, we straight away, I was like, look, Dax is no fool. He ain't doing this for no reason. There's going to be a college coming. So first of all, your initial thoughts on that?
First of all, with a business head on, I think it's such a fascinating development. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first college the country has ever had that's actually grown from a sort of open studio format. There's plenty out there that have just straight away become a college or have come up from being more of like a, how would you describe it, like a local dance school kind of thing and grown up from there. This coming from having been an open studio first, feels like it provides such a different format and so much different potential than anything else has had, because it's already right there in the heart of the industry. It's almost unlocked a secret gap in the market, which is just fascinating.
The reason why we're asking this question is for a very, very long time. Anyone who knows knows me. I've always sort of campaigned against colleges getting bigger, and you know, I think whether they realised it or not, it came from participation at Move It. Move It is a massive dance exhibition, and right from the beginning I said this is not good. This is not good how they were growing, because what they were doing was creating competition amongst colleges. So each college was like, right, well, in order to, when we're talking to someone at this exhibition, we need to say that our college is going to be bigger than this one and better than that one, and it's the best here, and we've got that, and our teachers are this. And anyone could see, well, I don't think they could, because they've just continued to get bigger and bigger. But I definitely could see that the bigger the colleges got, it's not good. It's good profit-wise probably for the colleges, but it's not great for the students. And, no one can say that where I trained in the 90s, in my third year, we finished off with, I think there was 8 of us left from a group of 30, 40 that started. you're always going to have much more intensive training when you've only got a small group, to now the year groups are like 50, 60, 100 plus. So on that sense, we've been like, well, it can't be a good thing.
Now, to play devil's advocate on that, on a very sort of surface level of this argument, there is obviously a supply and demand need for more colleges, because within the college audition scene, there are always more kids auditioning to get in than ever get in 1 year. So there is a real space in the market there. And therefore, is it such a bad thing that these kids are going to get the opportunity to actually at least go and train and try to achieve their dreams rather than never getting that opportunity? I guess my question back to you would be, does the monopoly of some colleges on students need to affect the existence of other colleges that are going to do it in more of an intense old school way?
Let's talk about some examples there, because we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a significant difference in the energy, in the professionalism, in the sort of the way they're presented, the material and portfolios coming from, let's say, the brand new colleges, the ones that aren't established for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Mainly Wilkes and Addict, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, Wilkes and Addict are very, very interesting. And I think just them as examples is another great argument for there is a need for more colleges. Because just when you look at the rate that these colleges have grown at, they've come up at such a speed that there's obviously a need for them. And I think some of this could also come down to the way the industry has developed. The industry now is obviously in a very different place in terms of what it requires from a professional dancer, a professional musical theatre performer, etc. Even just today as opposed to 10 years ago, within the theatre world, which is probably 100 times more traditional than what we would call commercial dance, in the theatre world, when we look at West End, a lot of the musicals now are more of a commercial hip-hop sort of style. You're talking about, and everyone's talking about Jamie and Aunt Juliet or Hamilton. Everything's coming up to date. And obviously this then comes with a factor of needing up-to-date training. Maybe there is a scenario that these colleges that have 100 years worth of history aren't necessarily turning out exactly what is needed for the current industry, even if on a technical level, these students are still incredible.
For anyone trying to guess, we are in favour of I know Dax personally, and he's a great guy and he's a smart guy. I firmly believe that he will get it right, and it will be the next big college, because he's always been on the button. And Bass is right there. It's the most popular. It's taken over from Pineapple easily as being the place to be. And it begs the question: what is actually needed today in colleges? Because we're going to be talking in a minute about the ballet world, and one of the things that did come into my head when I heard that Dax was going to be starting, Dax and what's matey from
Aston Marigold from JLS.
When they announced this, my first thing that came in my head was, are they going to keep the tradition of the core of a dancer's foundation? It is obviously ballet. For example, when I was at college, if you didn't do your ballet, that was it. It was the end of the world. You were not allowed to do anything else. And ballet was the most important thing. And, it was heavy ballet orientated, because that was the technique which helped you be able to get jazz, get your contemporary, and just be bigger at your funk and stuff like that. I could always tell when someone who was funky had also ballet skills, because, you looked at someone like Flexi Stew, who was ballet trained as well. He had much better moves than other lockers who were just kind of thing. So in my head, I'm like, well, I hope Dax does continue, the foundation, but how much is that foundation actually needed anymore?
I'm sure that they will be doing that, but obviously it's very hard to say because we've seen so little of them at the moment. So I'd say the easiest way to probably answer this one is to use Addict as an example. Addict, I almost feel frustrated for them, because I so often hear these comments amongst the industry of, addicts are just commercial, they're just new style, they're just hip hop. And it's not at all the actual truth. They have incredible tap teachers, incredible ballet teachers, incredible jazz teachers, but they're so on trend in knowing what the market needs that then what they tend to publicise themselves is that thing of, this is a style the industry is casting right now. What is the point in publishing a video of a dancer hitting 10 pirouettes in a studio when they know and we know that right now 10 pirouettes probably isn't going to get booked? I mean, I'm sure the student will get booked, but they're not going to get booked to do 10 pirouettes on the job. So I think there's something here where within the dance world, we're almost losing touch ourselves with what the training is based on what the industry needs. We're almost getting confused by the marketing, whereas these colleges are doing that technique. I mean, we all know as dancers, if that technique is lost, everything's lost. So I doubt they would go down that direction, but it does pose a very interesting point of, is it now just becoming a technique?
I don't think kids today would be into ballet because it's hard work, you know? And kids today, it seems like no one's into hard work. No one wants to do 9 pirouettes or whatever. I know they don't need to. However, if you could do 9 pirouettes, that would be your freestyle. You know, when everyone's freestyling, that would be your what's the word? Your special trick.
I think there's almost two sides to this. There is definitely that side of, do the students still want to do ballet? Obviously, there are plenty of kids out there who still absolutely love their ballet, just as much as has ever been the case. However, there definitely is a growing generation of those that just want an instant result. They just want to get in a studio and dance. It's going to be far easier to just sort of fake it and make a commercial routine look good than it is a real old school jazz or a classical ballet. Then on the opposite end, where there is also a bit of a dangerous ground, is with the demographic of audiences for ballet. I can say this from, there was one point last year that I was at a ballet establishment, a big training provider, and the teachers there were just going on and on about the fact that ballet has such an old demographic in their audience right now that if things don't change rapidly, they don't find a way to commercialise ballet. Ballet is reaching a point that in the next 20, 30 years, its whole audience have unfortunately just died. And that obviously from a financial sense then spans the end of it as a performance genre, which as dancers would be really sad to see. And that's where we have to have a real hope that ballet can update, ballet can come with the times, it can commercialise, and therefore can continue.
It'll be interesting. Maybe we could get Dax on here in the future to ask him, are you canning ballet or are you keeping it? Let's move on then. Why don't you, Bailey, just give a synopsis of, we're talking about the BBC Ballet documentary. I think it was a Panorama special.
Yeah, so the BBC aired a documentary essentially intended as an expose of two certain ballet establishments. They had personal accounts from probably 5 to 10 former students with, as we must say, alleged instances of potential abuse, sort of exploitation of power, hidden language around weight-related issues, and a failure on the college's behalf to effectively deal with these issues for essentially the welfare of the students.
Now, before we go on a little bit more about sort of the things that were said, it's interesting to make the distinction between the ballet world and colleges and the performing arts colleges. There is a difference.
Essentially, there's a historic issue within ballet of the way a ballerina is meant to look. And especially in the current climate of the world and the industry, it's becoming very apparent that that sort of prototype of a perfect ballerina is almost a very dangerous prototype. And then when we look historically at images of ballerinas from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it is now very easy to look at them and pose the argument of, they're obviously not healthy. Even though they are in that perfect ballet archetype, they must have problems going on which are obviously caused by this systemic root of what a ballerina is meant to be, which just doesn't sort of correspond with the rest of the dance world from contemporary right through to a hip-hop dancer.
we're not saying it doesn't happen in the performing arts colleges. However, there is no one going to be saying that you need to be looking stick thin to do that. I know as a choreographer myself, I would use dancers, for example, like Yasmin Ogbu, who, you know, she's not skinny, but she's not overweight. She would be strong, have, you know, she would be very toned, but have that sort of weight on her, so she could dance with real strength. Obviously, in the performing arts now, there is a much more acceptance that in casting they want a much more diverse, whether it's skin color or whether it's body type. That seems to be the norm now, and everyone has got on board with that and seems to be okay. Now, obviously, we're not saying that as a dancer you can just relax and not be athletic. Majority of clients will want athletic dancers. If you're going to be a dancer dancing behind, then you're going to need to be athletic most of the time. If you're a dancer making a name for yourself, it becomes about you individually, and then actually it doesn't really matter whether you're big or small or whatever. It's about your individual thing. However, going back to the ballet, this seems to be the number one thing in ballet, doesn't it? You've got to be...
Yeah, and I think it's super important that we make that distinction between lose weight and gain strength, build muscle. Exactly as that example you used with Yasmin. Obviously in ballet, a lot of this sentiment around what's needed in the body, what's needed with weight, is going to be rooted in the pas de deux side of ballet, where you need to be able to be lifted. But it is very easy to become so skinny that you actually become harder to lift because you just can't support yourself. We all know that actually muscle has more weight value than what fat would. So losing weight is just completely the wrong sentiment and advice to be given. They need to be as strong as possible to be able to make themselves light when they're lifted. It's strength that enables, not the actual physical losing of weight. It feels like it's going down a very dangerous ground, which sort of brings us to a point of where it needs to modernise, which is starting to bring science into dance. And this isn't only within the ballet world. This can be across a whole spectrum of dance and musical theatre. When we look at sports industries, for example, one of the best examples of this is within the boxing world. Many people will know in boxing, they do weigh-ins, and that is to ensure that these fighters are at their optimal weight to perform. We will absolutely have that same scientific side within dance, where we all have our own individual optimal weights to perform at. And it feels important that over the next few years, as we try to develop the industry and find better ways of doing things, that science is brought in. Because one of the big things that I picked up from this documentary is, whilst there are obviously scenarios with these allegations where the teachers cross the line, there are also scenarios there that it would be very easy for a teacher to argue that they were just trying to do the best thing for the student. And without the science, the teacher is left in a very dangerous space where they're having to give their opinion on what needs to happen with a certain person's body, when actually it's absolutely possible to have a factual figure right there that states this is where this person should be sat. Because some people are naturally bigger than others. That shouldn't be a reason they're destroyed on. They should be critiqued on an individual level of, are you at the optimum for your build, for your circumstance? It really feels like as things develop, there are a lot of scenarios that science and technology can really take over and transform these age-old systemic issues and sort of pose a solution which isn't only a solution but an improvement for the dancers themselves in terms of going on to achieve their dreams and ambitions.
Dancers need to be aware of what is needed, as well as what is needed, what also makes them happy and what makes them feel good and what makes them feel healthy. And, you know, it shouldn't be a stress. If you are stressing all the time about losing weight as a dancer, then you shouldn't have those stresses. It should either be, right, you need to be then, you know, if this is stressing, it's causing you mental health issues. Right, okay, either dance is not the right thing for you, because there needs to be, you know, parents need to know, obviously you're going into a profession that is it's based on athleticism, so you need to be of some kind of thing. However, this goes back to that question: is the industry kind of splitting to, do we need to be like that on dancers now? There seems to be an industry opening up where dancers don't need to be athletic. They can be bigger. And especially if they're individually becoming the stars on social media for themselves, then it becomes about personality. In the ballet world, it tends to be all about supporting the one person, or the male and the female, and everyone else is the chorus, or the corps de ballet, I think it's called. Is ballet a dying art, basically? Is it essential for dance professionals, for example, that they need to have it, or will it be consigned to the dustbin at one point?
One other thought that I've just had also is, with all of these arguments, is it that these students need to be doing all of these extra things to make the teachers happy? Or is this actually a failure on a training level? If you're teaching a room full of dancers who you don't believe are strong enough, does that not pose a question for you of, right, I need to do more strength and conditioning classes? Is this actually that the colleges aren't doing enough? You're there in intensive training. Are they doing enough to actually get you there? Even down to like the nutrition. Obviously within the sports industries, in football, a lot of the meals those players have are given to them by the club. In boxing, their entire meal structure throughout their entire training camp is done by nutritionalists. Those boxers, those footballers aren't going home and cooking for themselves. Is there a scenario here that for colleges to actually move forward, again, we need to bring in more science, we need to bring in more technology and offer more, even down to getting them in a gym with proper professionals, not just going an opinion and advice of, oh, you need to go on a run, you need to lose weight, you need to eat this. Is that actually helpful? Or can we do more to help these things rather than creating these issues of making comments that get misconstrued, get misinterpreted, and putting ourselves in danger trying to help artists, and also putting those artists in danger of the way they react to those comments?
I think it comes down to being clear of what is needed and what is desired, I suppose, by clients. A few years back, I wouldn't have thought, I would have gone, absolutely not. We're not taking that girl on because she's not, you can see her body is a little, she's a bit this and a bit that, she's got that. But now we take on people for different reasons. Well, we know that person's going to be castable. Well, we know there's clients who like this style of people. There are some clients who will always want, right, we need athletic, we want to see six-pack abs, and the boys have got to be this and the girls have got to be that. To an old head like mine, it's taken time to get used to that being acceptable. I used to be like, no, you have to be like an athlete. But do you?
Well, I mean, I guess this comes down to a case of, if you want to see dancers being athletes, we need to treat them and train them like they are athletes. Right now, we're not doing that, but we're still trying to demand athletes. For example, as a comparison, if you look at a footballer in the 90s, they were a completely different physique than they are today. And that's because football updated with the science and technology. Dance hasn't done that, yet we're still trying to demand the same from a professional dancer today as we would from a Marcus Rashford in football. It's a very unrealistic standard that we try and demand. If we're not giving it, then why do we feel like we should still be unable to demand it?
Yes. What I will say is, over the last 5 years, with stories like, for example, the ballet school in Scotland, and then something like this, and with the Me Too movement, I do think performing arts colleges are looking at the ballet schools thinking, right, thank God we haven't been exposed, so let's get our house in order. And it definitely seems to be getting better. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this BBC documentary ended on a sentiment from one of the students of, the ballet world likes to say it wants to change, but doesn't actually display any actions of wanting to change. which is a very, very interesting sentiment. And obviously that is exactly what needs to change. And I think this is what you are going to see across the board. And we've already seen starting to happen across the board for the last 5 years. No one wants a negative reputation. No one wants to be seen as a bad person. So they are going to sort their act out. And almost the more of these kind of things that do come out, the more change we will see. So I think my overall sentiment would be to encourage people to keep talking. As long as everything is causing development, not just causing argument, then it's very, very healthy for the industry, because it's definitely a conversation that is needed.
Just before we move on, we must say that obviously, do go watch. Put comments down in the comments box if you watched the documentary and what your opinions are. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. We'll put a link down below. It'll be interesting to get your thoughts on it. But what I will say is they are allegations. They didn't, although they named colleges, they didn't name names. So we must presume people are obviously, I would assume that these people are telling the truth. However, we must also, people are innocent until proven guilty kind of thing. And funnily enough, we were talking about this off camera about we recently become fans of the black belt barrister, and he put up a post today saying about the situation with Russell Brand, and saying that you must not, and I thought this was really interesting, Ballet, you must not online say whether you think someone is innocent or guilty. So we're not going to say anything whether are people innocent or guilty. They're allegations. Watch the documentary and see for yourself whether how you feel about these kind of things. It's definitely, whether people have done it or not, the issues have definitely, the issues are there. I can say that, you can say that from, both of us training through sort of institutions. We were chatting just before one of our meetings the other day, and I said to Bailey, oh my God, the VMAs have been on. Like, when did, I didn't even know they were still happening. But the reason why I said that was because I saw a video of a pop star called Anitta. And I thought, well, I had some comments about her performance. But first of all, I thought, right, well, obviously, Bailey being only 25 and me 45, obviously Bailey is going to know who Anitta is. And I said, oh, have you heard of Anitta? And what did you say, Bailey?
Absolutely no idea. Never even heard the name.
Which I couldn't believe. I was like, oh, right. Well, then how the hell is she performing at the VMAs? So, for those who don't know who she is, Anitta is a Latin American music artist, widely regarded as the biggest female pop artist to ever come from Brazil. Recently named among the world's 15 most influential musicians by Billboard. I can't believe we don't know who she is. Anitta has 21.4 million monthly listeners on Spotify. In 2021, becoming the first Brazilian artist to ever top the Spotify 200 chart. Hello? How have we missed this woman?
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, when I first read that line of one of the 15 most influential musicians in the world, I was like, surely that can't be true. Then actually, when I took a second, I just couldn't help but think about the whole side of sort of language barriers around the world. Obviously, being a Latin American artist, I'm sure a lot of her music is probably done in a language where we won't necessarily understand that. And likewise, that then poses the question of, is there K-pop artists that are also on that 15 most influential list, which we will never have heard of? And it almost just brought me to this point of, like, I guess a realization of complacency in our own knowledge.
We're presuming here she does speak in Spanish. The reason why we're talking about Anitta is because not only have we both not heard who she is, but when she performed, I watched it thinking, is that one of the dancers filling in for the artist? And this is rehearsal, because she didn't stand out at all. She was wearing almost like the same clothes, the same types of colours. It made me think straight away, we've got to stand out performers. If you want to be seen as behind, then you don't have to stand out. But if you want to be seen as the star, and I'm not saying that you want to be a pop star, but if you know, nowadays as a dancer, you can get massive on social media and you can be your own individual star, but you've got to stand out. You've got to have some kind of distinction.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you showed me this video, I couldn't help but draw a parallel from the attire she was wearing to the sort of audition scene, audition technique, where I know as dancers, we're so often taught with auditions, wear a bright colour to make sure you're noticed. And it made me think, looking at that performance on stage, okay, she's wearing a bright colour, but because everyone around her is also wearing those bright colours, she's blending in that same way that we've always been told. If you turn up to an audition wearing your tracksuit, you're just going to blend in. Actually, it's not necessarily about just colour is the be-all and end-all fix. It's about finding anything you can to be different. One example that we can give from when we were holding auditions last year, coloured cargo pants were very much in. So everyone turned up to audition in coloured cargo pants. So actually you just ended up where it was like a combination of Skittles all across the room. Everyone had those bright colours, which meant no one stood out. We've got to find those extra elements to sort of be seen from the pack.
Yeah, it's not just colours, it's individuality. And with artists, I was going to say, you know, if this Anitta is going to make it, she obviously has made it massive. We got no idea about it. But if she is going to make it massive for a long period of time, she is going to have to find her own individual style. If you look at icons, you can say something from their wardrobe and people straight away, you know, if I was a manager of an artist, I'd be saying, right, we've got to find a costume. We've got to find a hairdo. We've got to find something so little girls can dress up like you. I always remember Jamelia. I don't know if you remember Jamelia. She had a massive hit called Superstar. Superstar.
Oh, yeah, got you.
Yeah. I knew you'd get it from my amazing singing.
Of course.
And she basically, for every performance, wore a different coloured dress. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, okay, that's kind of, maybe for this one, she's just wearing different coloured dresses. But then the next song came out, exactly the kind of same. Now, down the line, she had a hit called Like a Boy, which was a big hit. I think it got to #1. And in that video, she wore an army uniform. She was doing walking like a soldier, salutes and stuff like that. And I thought, this is it. She is going to wear that uniform for when she does Top of the Pops and when she does sort of, performances. But she didn't. And hence, I don't know where she is now. Maybe, I hope she's still with us. But she's not a big pop star anymore. So you've got to be iconic. You've got to have, Michael Jackson had his trilby. Amy Winehouse had her big hair. Madonna had her cones.
Yeah, this is it. It's finding the element that's going to get people talking. To use another example from the VMAs, there was another artist performed called Kelsey Ballerini, who, she's quite big, but she's nowhere near the levels of exposure of some of the other artists who perform. Yeah, straight over your head. And she essentially, in her performance, she was wearing like a long dress, and then there was one moment where smoke came over, and then she ripped off that long dress and there was a short one underneath. And just that moment of the performance made her one of, if not probably the most talked about performance of the evening. And this is, again, a parallel back to the audition scene. This is exactly what we need to be looking at. It's not just pick your good outfit on a morning, then you're good. It's even when you're in the room, look around, see what other people are doing, see what crazy out of the box decision you can make that's going to get people noticing. And it is almost that iconic moment, that iconic look. Whatever would be an iconic look or an iconic action on stage is exactly what in an audition room will become the memorable auditionee. We've got to make that transition. Allow yourself to be a star in that audition room before there is 1,000 fans stood cheering in front of you.
Well, that brings us to the VMAs, right? Because I was not only surprised by Anitta, that I hadn't heard of it, or you hadn't heard of her, but I was like, oh, the VMAs, are they still going? It seemed like there would be no advertisement and no one was excited about them. And then I thought, this was my logic of a 45-year-old. Then I thought, Well, obviously, there's no music videos no more. I mean, occasionally people are filming them, but no one's watching them anymore. And Bailey shot me down straight away, didn't you?
Yeah. So, as anyone of my generation will know, the music video scene on YouTube is ridiculous. There is probably more people consuming music videos today than there was back in the day of Stuart being a dancer. However, it's consumed in such a different way that now it feels like it's only reaching one demographic.
So what's happened to the box? What's happened to it must be MTV must still be going on, because that's the Video Music Awards, isn't it? But fresh hits, like what's happened to them, Bailey? Are these channels, have they died?
I mean, this is where you're over my head now. MTV, I know, that's what I watched as a kid. And this is also what's crazy, how quick it's changed. As a kid, I'd sit and watch MTV all day. Now when you go watch MTV, it's 90% just reality TV. There is still like the top 40 show where they'll show music videos, but that is probably the smallest part of the MTV channel.
So they're watching it on YouTube, and they're making, someone's making much more money because, you could argue music videos didn't make any money years ago because they were just used as a promotional tool. Now they're making millions on YouTube. So you're saying the kids they're watching music videos. I just can't imagine typing in to watch a music video on YouTube. It just seems so alien.
But this is where the whole business model has flipped, hasn't it? Where back in even my childhood, the music videos were used as a marketing tool to sell an album. But now they're not trying to sell an album, they're just getting streaming numbers. Streaming numbers is almost the same as a view count on a YouTube music video. They're monetizing both ends. You no longer need your audience to go out and buy a product. The whole model has flipped, which, interestingly enough, on the VMAs this year, Fall Out Boy did a performance of one of their new songs, and one of the lyrics in that song is "YouTube killed MTV." And I found myself sat there watching that on MTV's YouTube channel, which I just thought that is such a resonant line, that is such a sign of the times, that you're watching that line, and it's obviously true because where you're watching it is exactly what the line is trying to tell you.
I remember Nikki Wilkes of Wilkes Academy, obviously. She was, we went to college together, and she was in a pop group. There was three girls in a pop group, and she was one of them. And her song was on the box. Now, back in those days, if you didn't call in, if no one called in, they wouldn't show anything. They'd just show the listings. So I remember calling in to watch Nikki's music video, and I had to wait literally about 8 hours. It was about 4 a.m. when they showed it. And I was like, oh my God. And I don't even know if that was from my phone call, It was probably just on the loop, and they were just like, if anyone did call in, they'd go, right, okay. Well, actually saying that, sometimes you'd get the same, this will be alien to you, Bailey. They would play the same video over and over and over and over again if people were calling in for it. But yes, Nikki, if you're watching, I stayed up 7-8 hours to watch your video. I mean, it's crazy to think, isn't it, Bailey, that you'd have to wait to see something. Now, instant.
I always think this when I hear people talk about Michael Jackson's Thriller, how there was such a build up to that video being released and people stayed up till midnight to watch the video. I can't imagine ever waiting around for a video release now. I mean, they do actually premiere videos on YouTube, but I can't imagine ever thinking about tuning in for that. I'll just watch the video the next day.
I remember, I think the last people who did it quite good was, I remember Take That, when they came back and they kept with it, like the last couple of weeks before it came out, they were giving little clips of them walking and then all coming together. And then when you saw the video, it was all about them dragging their mics. Yeah, at the very end, they all come together and they, and the Patience, that song. It was a masterpiece, and it was brilliant because I couldn't wait to see the video. Nowadays, bang, you get like Taylor Swift has just released a whole album. Oh, Beyonce's just released her new album. You're like, just out of nowhere. I mean, coming from a Michael Jackson fan era, bloody hell, that guy, do you know what I mean? You'd have to wait 4 years for an album, and when it came, God, he would be advertising that. Do you know what I mean? Statues down the Thames and everything.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, why not check out some great content from some of our 3RINGS talent. Catch choreographer Ian Banham discussing Latin and ballroom training and tales from the industry as a guest on Driving with Dancers. Or take a look at 3RINGS influencer Alexa Williams giving a realistic week in the life of an auditioning performer.
Bailey, are we ready? Are we ready to unleash this last topic?
So let's go in for it. Tube Girl time.
Okay. Tell me, who the is Tube Girl?
So, Tube Girl is a model from London who, in sort of the middle of August, blew up on TikTok for filming these videos on the tube where she's essentially just got no inhibitions. She's just got pure confidence, and the whole internet have just loved it. She's blown up. There's now celebrities like an Emma Brooks McAllister, Rebecca Porch, Madeline Klein, who are copying this video, which is really what sort of sent her into the stratosphere. And it's all just from this one little thing. But she's now completely capitalising on this moment. She's just walked for MAC Cosmetics on the runway. By the time this video comes out, it'll be 2 weeks ago, but this weekend just gone, she's just been in Italy filming for Boss, alongside Dixie D'Amelio, who, this will go way over your head against Stuart, but she's a sister of who used to be the most followed person on TikTok. I believe she's now the second most followed person. But yeah, I mean, Dixie D'Amelio is probably one of the biggest people on social media right now. So literally in the space of a month, she's gone from just someone kicking around London to like a world level star.
If I was sitting on the tube, now, as you know, Bailey, I try to be as positive and calm and, I want to be a good person at all times, right? However, if I was sitting on the tube and I saw someone with a selfie, I presume she's got a selfie stick, and someone doing that on the tube in the middle of the day, I'm afraid in the deepest little area of my brain, there would be a negative thing to it saying, who is this bloody dickhead? Like, who is this person, like, this wannabe?
I'm sure most people sat around her were probably thinking exactly that when she's filming these videos. But I think that is actually what is great about this. That she just doesn't care so much. That she's just out there, she's confident, she's doing a thing, and it's almost, as children, we were always told, like, the whole world's a stage. Like, that is just her life now. She's actioning it, and it's working for her, so good on her. No need to listen and care about everyone. She's having success, she's loving life.
It gives everyone hope, I think. When I see something like this, it gives everyone hope. I think, at any point, if something happens, I could get my video out, boom, and that's it. I could make. She must be making well, I don't know. She must have made shitloads of money, surely.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, think of the money like a MAC Cosmetics, a Boss are going to be paying for this. She's using this moment and she's running with it. But also the fact she's running with it is what's great, because there's so many people that fall upon these trends and accidentally change their life for a few weeks. But because they don't capitalise in the moment, then they fall off again as quickly as they came. With Tube Girl, as quick as she's come, she's like, right, hit the market, and she's doing all this stuff. It's like she's now instantly, in the space of a month, cemented herself what I'm sure is going to be now a long-term career, as she is Tube Girl. She is going to be an internet star. She's just really took advantage of that moment.
So you think Tube Girl's got a future?
Oh, for sure. I mean, she's already exploited that brand presence to enough of a level that she's getting these brand deals, so she's there to stay with that. But there's so much more she can build off this, because the internet have called her Tube Girl and she's just ran with it. Like, she refers to herself as it now. So if you think, like, it's a good name, really. Do you know what I mean? Tube Cosmetics, she can have her own makeup range. Even with a company like MAC, who she's already connected with now. A podcast that the whole set is just done in the theme of a tube. Like, she's got everything there ready to go and she's doing it. I really feel like she is going to become a big name because she's just activated straight away.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to her. Good luck to her. Good luck to her. So, I've enjoyed our first episode. You need to do what they're called. What is it? The CTAs. What are they?
CTAs, call to actions. I mean, we should tell them this because it's essentially us going, oh yeah, remember to give them their instructions. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're still watching by now, you've obviously enjoyed the episode, so click a like, subscribe to the channel, drop us a comment down below if there's something you want us to talk about. I mean, we'll talk about anything, so fire at us. And most importantly, hit the notification bell so when next week's episode comes out, you know all about it.
We're going to be back next week for episode 2, so look out for that with a load more topics. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Bailey.
Anytime, Stuart. See you next week.
From me and Bailey and 3 Rings, we will see you next week. Take care.